Hi guys, could the former Tory leader and Prime Minister for 5 minutes, Liz Truss, join Reform UK? On the surface, she seems to tick a lot of boxes. She's a Conservative who doesn't fit in with her party anymore. She has embraced a whole range of far-right positions, and she isn't able to take responsibility for anything. She seems to be the perfect candidate, and a former Prime Minister would be a major win for Reform, at least on paper. But Conservative commentators on Times Radio seem to think otherwise. They believe it would be an absolute disaster if Reform were to welcome Liz Truss on board, and I tend to agree. Have a listen to why.
This would be a disaster for Reform to accept her, and somebody in Reform said Nigel knows this.
Why hasn't Liz Truss joined Reform yet, and what should they say when she wants to? Anyone?
Well, I think it would be a disaster for Reform.
Yeah.
So who knows whether she'll decide to do that. I just don't. It's just very difficult to say. But I think she'd probably appreciate that Reform won't want it. So I wrote in a column that I thought this would be a disaster for Reform to accept her, and somebody in Reform said Nigel knows this.
It'd be good for the Conservatives,
they texted
wouldn't it?
me. Nigel knows this.
It'd be amazing for the Conservatives if they did it. Yeah. I mean, do we? I've sort of long been of the view that the basically where it all started going wrong for the Conservatives, although they remained in government for a long time later, Danny, was the point at which they stopped being the most trusted party on the economy, because if they're not the most trusted party on the economy, they're not anything.
No, of course, and that was critical. And look, this was
because of Brexit, right?
Well, yeah, of course.
F business.
Yeah.
Right?
I think it came a bit later than that. I think that
Right.
I think it came. It certainly wasn't the case in the 2019 general election. They were more trusted in Labour because Labour had moved. But
that was anti-Labour though, rather than it wasn't a view that Boris Johnson can run business.
All these things are comparative, right? But the Liz Truss. That's why the Liz Truss event was such a disaster and will be for years and years. And the Conservative Party is going to have to construct its policy understanding that was the case, just as Tony Blair did in policies that he picked during the
90s, yeah.
2000 and no, the 1997 election it was. He responded to the accusation that Labour would spend loads of money by matching Tory spending plans, and then saying, yes, even if that involves privatisation, we'll still do it.
Okay. I'm fascinated by this idea of Liz Truss joining Reform UK. But I want to respond to the first point first about the economy. And yes, the Conservatives lost the support of the public when it came to the economy as a result of Liz Truss. Not so much because of Brexit. As was pointed out here, the 2019 election, they won a massive majority, an 80-seat majority. So the public did trust them when it came to the economy, irrespective of Brexit, which is insane, but that's the reality of the situation. Now, I've been saying for so long that Rishi Sunak, when he took over from Liz Truss, he should have kicked both Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng out of the party. And that was a massive mistake that he didn't do that. Because he should have seen, as everyone could see, that the mini-budget damaged the Conservatives. They lost 6 percentage points in the polls because of that. Another 6% went because of Partygate. But 6 percentage points was lost because of Liz Truss's mini-budget. And that remained an albatross around the Conservatives' neck going into the general election after. There was an opportunity to make a break from the past, to kick her out, to suspend them both, to remove the whip. It would have been draconian, but it would have created a clean break for the Conservatives. But Rishi Sunak was too weak. And Liz Truss still had influence, even though she was no longer an MP after that. Liz Truss still has influence within the Conservative Party. There are people still listening to her. People still associate her with the Conservative Party. That should have ended as soon as Rishi Sunak took over. But that's water under the bridge. Now, the other point, which I find hilarious, is this idea that Liz Truss could join Reform. She would love to join Reform UK because it's another platform for her to pontificate from, to maintain her influence. And she loves attention, so Reform UK could be a vehicle for that. But as we keep mentioning, Nigel Farage doesn't want another captain on board. And of course, Liz Truss, being a former Prime Minister, would want to have a significant position within Reform. And I don't think Nigel Farage will be on board with that idea. So I don't see her joining because Nigel Farage is not stupid. Liz Truss would be somebody who would want power within Reform. She'd want a high status position. She doesn't want to be a councillor or an MP. She wants to be in a strong position. Remember, she was a prime minister, so she would be hoping that she gets something of similar status. But she would be somebody you could not control. The Conservatives couldn't control her. They should have kicked her out of the party. They decided not to, and she created havoc. So if she was in Reform, she would be doing exactly the same thing. And then what would happen? Well, there would be a disagreement and she would have to leave. A bit like what happened with Zia Youssef or Rupert Lowe or Ben Habib. So I don't think Liz Truss would be welcomed on board. Some people, of course, on the far right would love to see Liz Truss on board because they think she brings star power. These are the same people who think that the mini budget was probably a good idea. So I don't think Nigel Farage or the Reform leadership are going to listen to those people. But it would be fascinating just from an entertainment point of view to see Liz Truss join Reform, create a lot of problems, and then eventually get kicked out. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.